Hi, this is Ron Ovitt, Mr. Change Agent, and today we're going to be talking again about our change blueprint. And our change blueprint has different elements in it, and today we're going to talk about do, don't, and desire. Do, don't, and desire. Our change blueprint has 9 different elements into it because change is hard. Change takes time. And I've explained this a lot, and I tend to do it in each video, but until we get to understand it, I think it's important. And that is, you have a continuum here. You have what you call a habit. And if all you're going to try to do is change a habit, that may not take forever. For example, I was biting my nails for many years, 50-something years, right? And it took me one day to stop biting them once I knew the secrets. And I have a whole video you can watch on that, right? And how to change that. But I work with people in addictions, and that takes more. And so you have a habit. You have what I call an urge, but then you also have a craving. And these cravings get hard. And so the farther you are on this continuum, the more you need knowledge, skills, and time. You need a lot more things on here. And so the farther you go down here, right, the higher you go here. Now here's the secret. I can't help where you are on here. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that you have to recognize where you are. And you may think that's easy, but it's not. Deep in your heart you do, but we don't want to admit that. Denial is huge when it comes to cravings and addictions. It's what they call cognitive dissonance. No one wants to think something about themselves, that's negative, right? But if we're not honest, we can't get help. And so here's the thing. I can't help where you are. I'd rather you say, Ron, I'm way over here. I'm just full-blown addict. Because here's the secret. I can help you where you are. I can't help where you are, but I can help you where you are. And these principles will work only if you realize it and you're willing to do this, put more time, knowledge, and skills. And so that's what these videos are about. I have a whole bunch of them. I have webinars. We have a 1-year class because this stuff takes time, right? I'm a recovery coach. I work with some people 5 years. Doesn't mean that they're out there relapsing all the time. It's just these things are deeply rooted in us. Many times we regulate, we medicate to regulate our emotions. And I know, I was full of anxiety and depression. I was a phobic child. I'm a pastor, and my first 10, 15 years in the ministry was just riddled with anxiety. I was functional. But I know, and when I started working in addictions, I went into undergrad and graduate school in psychology, and when I started working with people in addictions, it didn't take me long at all to say, well, there's no difference here. They're full of anxiety. They have same issues. They have the stinking thinking, if you will, like I did. And so we need to work on these. We medicate to regulate our emotions. And so we need to work. And that's what this blueprint's about. It's going to help you. And so today, when we make some change, whether it's in our diet, whether it's in substance abuse, whether it's in exercise, we apply these principles. And one thing here is your do, don'ts, and desires. And most people start with don't, right? We tend to have a bias toward negativity. And so they go ahead and we emphasize, don't hang around with, and you've heard this one probably, people, places, things. And what you'll find is that in any habit, you'll have a lot of secondary habits, right? It's not just the fact that maybe you want to change a sugar addiction. It's what you eat. You might not be tempted with one thing, but man, bring in that certain donut, man, and you just melt. You know what I mean? And so you have, it's what you eat, it's where you eat, it's who you eat with, it's when you eat, it's what you're thinking when you eat, it's what you're thinking after you eat, it's what you're feeling before you eat, it's what you're feeling after you eat. See, all those things need to be taken into account. And so this don't list can get pretty big, but if that's all we had, it's not going to happen. It's important that we do the don'ts, but it's also important that we do do the do's. How's that? That we do the do's. You know, what do you want to do? And we know research has shown that when we start off with something more positive and rewarding, it goes farther. It goes farther. And so we know that the do is important. What is it that you want to do? Because here's the key. The key is that you, a lot of times, substitute. You substitute. And so when you substitute something, for example, when I quit sugar, I decided to quit sugar, but, you know, I like chocolate. And they make sugarless, you know, chocolate sometimes. So I don't eat a lot of it, but I have a little bit in my drawer, and every once in a while I'll take one. You know, I didn't just decide to be the Grinch, you know, who stole sugar, you know, and sweet tasting things. There's a lot of things you can substitute today, and it's exciting. So substitution. And another one is minimum. What is your minimum? That will save you. When I was running, I ran for like 35 years. When I was running, a lot of times, you know, if you get sick, like in the winter, I'd run outside and I'd get a little sick. I still wanted to run. But I knew I couldn't be doing no 5 miles that day, so I set a minimum. I said, you know, I want to at least run a quarter mile. I ran at a track, and I knew I could, heck, if I was, you know, unless I had a broken leg, I could make one lap. But what I found is once I got there, I'd probably raise that minimum to 3. But I set a minimum, and that's important. Because what's important in any change, in anything you're going to do, is the consistency. It needs to be done all the time. And we talked about this in our goal. You might want to go back and look at that video on goals. And I talk in there about how we need to set these micro goals, make them smaller sometimes. And so, you know, resolutions are about do's, and you know how good those work, right? So we need to set minimums, substitutions, you know, that we need to make, and then we need to be consistent, do it every day. But here's a real key, and one that a lot of people don't really talk about when they're talking about change. You know, you can just grit it out. You know, there's a whole book on grit, you know, and we can use grit, and grit is important. You know, we got to just tough it out sometimes. But really, desire is what motivates us, isn't it? Desire. I mean, we do things because of the rewards it gives us, the desires. And each one of us have what I call core yearnings. And they were in us, you know, as a child. You know, we have different core yearnings. What would some of these be? Well, for example, to belong, right? To have that sense of belonging. That's an important yearning. We want to belong. And we want to be, you know, significant. We want to know. And in the biblical sense of that word, it's an experiential knowledge. We want to know what? That we're loved unconditionally. You know, this was one of the hardest things for me to really learn. And here I was telling everyone how God loved them, right? And I would go on and not even believe it myself. It wasn't about God, it was about the fact that I didn't feel lovable. And so we want to look at these core yearnings and what is it that we desire. And this is where mind skills, I have a whole webinar on mind skills that will get into that will help us. That will help us learn a little bit more of how can we take these desires and start visualizing and let them move. So it's important that we know what we don't want to do, what we want to do, and then what do we really desire. And if we put all those together, that will help us make significant change. You can learn more about this on our webinar when we go into the whole change blueprint. And I have other videos you can watch as well. This is Ron Ovitt, Mr. Change Agent. You can find out more at empowerforliving.com.